Alright, so we're ready here to continue on actually in the last worksheet, but it had a little break. So on page 71 in the worksheets, geometric mean and average percent change. But before I start in that, I wanted to bring up in the text, so this is page, well, it's right here, page 6-15 in the ebook, right? So if you go to that page in section 6.3, you'll come to this page, and we have three definitions here, right? So there are three different ways to find an average, right? And typically when we use the word average, we're speaking about the arithmetic mean, right? Which is where we add up all the numbers and divide by how many we have. So typically we'll reserve saying find the average to the we imply arithmetic mean, right? So we use the word mean in the others, so that way we can identify which is which, right? So if I say find the average, we mean arithmetic mean, but we have three other ways to find a mean, right? We have arithmetic mean, geometric mean, and harmonic mean. So you can see here the arithmetic mean is the common usage of average. Geometric mean is something that we're going to have to use when we have growth factors, right, to find an average percent change. And the harmonic mean is when we need to average rates, right? So in this worksheet, we're going to look at an example of a rate of density, right? Density is a special type of rate, right? So we're going to look at that, right? So you want to make sure you have these equations and know how to use them, right? So this means the nth root, right? So if you want to undo something that's cubed, we use the nth root to do that, right? All right, so I'm ready to start into the worksheet. Actually, let me go split screen with my calculator. All right, so geometric mean and average percent change, right? So you can read over this on your own, right? I won't waste time here just to read that for you. But the thing to note is that the average percent change in this example is not the arithmetic mean, right? This is the arithmetic mean. That doesn't work, right? So what we have to do is we can use this procedure or this procedure to find the average percentage change, which is 49.5%, right? So you can use either way, either equation. So in the equation, P equals P naught times 1 plus R raised to the T, right? R is your average growth rate. Average growth rate, right? So what we need to do is plug in what we know, solve for R, right? So something to note, if I have something like, I don't know, x squared equals 25, right? If I want to get that by itself, I have to take the square root of both sides, right? And I get x equals actually be positive or negative 5, right? If your power is even, so if it's even, you have plus minus, and if it's odd, you would just have whatever sign is over here, right? So if I have something like x to the fifth equals, I don't know, like 125, right? Here, to undo the fifth exponent, you take what's called the fifth root, right? So this nth root signifies what exponent we're trying to undo, right? So the fifth root of 125, right? We can find that in my calculator. So how you code that in the calculator, and it's going to be different depending on what kind of calculator you have, right? So on my calculator, I'm going to hit 5 and then math, and then I'm going to go to option 5, right? So you want that button that has an X, and then we can just type in 125. Right, hit enter, and we get that. So we get 2.62. So equals 2.62, right? So depending on your calculator, the general rule of thumb is you're going to hit this guy out first, and then you're going to be looking for a key that looks like this. It has a radical sign and an X up here, and then inside parentheses is where you put the 125, right? And then hit equals. So you're going to be looking for those keys. If you have just a basic scientific calculator, typically this key is found right above the caret symbol, right, the exponent symbol. So you might have a caret key like this, and then you might see this right above, right? All right, so ready to continue on to number 6, right? So we'll practice an example very similar to the one previously, right? So it says, use the appropriate technique to answer the following. So a mutual fund increases 8% in 1 year, loses 5.2% in the next, and then is up 12.3% the following year. What is the average percent change, right? So notice here, I don't know the initial amount, right? So essentially what I'm taking into consideration, right, is that if I have p naught times 1 plus r raised to the t power, right, this is going to be equal to taking my original value and then multiplying by each of the individual factors. Right, so here we have 3 rates, 8%, 5.2, 12.3. So these are the individual rates of each year, where this R is my average percent change, right? Or my average rate, right? So, but if we have this equation on both sides and I divide both sides by p naught, right, then these p naughts cancel out, right? So whatever value that is, if it's 10,000, 5,000, 100,000, 1, it doesn't make a difference. It's going to end up dividing out. So what I'm left with is my equation in this form, right? So you'd have 1 plus r1 times 1 plus r2 times 1 plus r3, right? So what we can do is we can fill in what we know, right? So I'm trying to find this guy. This is what I'm trying to find. So my equation would be 1 plus r raised to the, and this is 3 years, right? We have 3 iterations. So this t would be 3, and then I would have 1 plus 0.08, right? So that's an increase of 8%. And then the next one loses 5.2%, so this would be 1 minus 0.052. And then the third year is up 12.3, so this would be 1 plus 0.123, right? So that's how we can build this equation. So I'm going to do some erasing above so I have some room to write. Right, so I'm going to leave the last line that I have, and I'll go ahead and switch colors also so it's less confusing. Right, so get rid of this. Hopefully you already copied it down. If you need to, you can rewind the video. Right. Alright, so let me grab a different color, do blue. Alright, so I'm trying to solve this guy, right? Solve for R. So I can just plug in my calculator to find what this product is, right? These things multiplied. So I would have 1 plus R cubed equals, right? So we can just type this in. So we have 1 plus 0.08, oops, times 1 minus 0.052, and then times 1 plus 0.123. Hit enter, and we can get that value, right? So we get 1.1497722, right? So then to solve for r, I want to get rid of this exponent, so I have to do the cubed root to both sides, right? So 1 plus r equals, and then whatever the cubed root of that is, right? So I actually have a button that does cubed root, right? So if I go into my math menu, I have this option here that does a cube root already, right? Because cube root's pretty common, square root and cube root. So then I can go to second and then just hit my answer, right? So instead of typing that whole number back in, I'm saying, hey, just take the cube root of the answer I got previously, right? If I hit enter, I can get that. So we end up getting this 1.0476 number, right? So to find r, I need to subtract 1 from both sides, and I finally get r, right? So if I take this minus 1 I get this, right? And this is in decimal form. So to turn it into percent, I need to multiply by 100, right? I move the decimal point 2 spots to the right. So R is equal to 4.76%, right? And it's a positive, right? So that would be a percent increase overall, right? And so we have an average of 4.76%, right? So what this average rate of return means is, even though we have these different values here, right? If I were to just simply give a 4.76% increase each year, we would still get at we would get to the same amount in the end, right? So if I start with $1,000, right, then I could follow it through with all of these, right, and get an amount, right? So we could figure out what that amount would be, right? I would take 1,000. Actually, let me go second entry until we get to where we are multiplying these all together, right? Right here. So this is where we are multiplying all the factors together, right? So if I go to second insert, I can put in $1,000 at the beginning, right? How much I put into this mutual fund, right? If I hit enter, I'll get this value, right? So if I put $1,000 in, after the 3 years, right, I'll end up having $1,149.77, right? So this would be the same thing as if I took 1,000 times 1 plus 0.0476. This would be to the third power, right? Because my time is 3. And if I hit enter, I get the same result, right? And we are a little off a little bit, but that's, remember, because this 476 number, remember that was rounded. So of course we're going to be a little off, right? But you can see it gives us the same result back, right? So that's what we mean by finding R. That's the average percent change. So it's so if we were to use that percent change every year, it'd be the same thing as doing 8% increase, 5.2% decrease, and then a 12.3% increase, right? So then number 7 says a town grows from 12,456 people to 32,980 in 5 years. So it asks part A, what is the average total change per year, right? So the average total change per year is different than part B. What is the average percent change per year, right? Oops. Hang on a moment. This should come back here. Oh, jump the screen down. My bad. All right. So the average total change is different than the average percent change, right? To find the average total change, I'm essentially finding like slope, like how much should I add each year on average, right? So we would take 32,980 minus 12,456 and then divide it by 5, right, to get the average total change. So if you do this, you should get 4,104.8 people per year, right? So that's what we're increasing by every year. So to find the average percent change, right, I would want to use the idea that we just did above. So this was in 5 years, right? So I would have so we would have 32,980, right? I'm using this equation, P equals P naught times 1 plus R raised to T, right? So my P is my end value, right? The 32,980. P naught, that's my initial value, which is what we started with, which is 12,456. Then we'd have 1 plus R. And then my T here, right? So let me go ahead and erase this so it's out of the way. So this is raised to the T power, right? So the T power here would be 5 years, right? So I'd put a 5. So we need to solve for R, right? Solve for R. So I divide both sides by 12,456. So we get 1 plus R to the 5th power equals 32,980 80 over 12,456. So if I take the fifth root of both sides, I would get 1 plus r equals this. So the fifth root of 32,980 all over 12,456. And then to get r by itself, I need to subtract 1, right? So here on this side, I'm left with just r, right? So this is r equals, right? So if I put this in my calculator, I can find r. So to do this, I would I need to do the fifth root, so I need to hit 5 first, right? And then I need to find this button here in your calculator, however you get to it. And then I need to put in this fraction, 32,980 divided by 12,456, right? And then important here, I need to close my parenthesis depending on how yours looks, or with mine, it's a little more advanced, right? So you would want to put this in parentheses, but if yours looks like mine, it has this this type of field to it. If I hit the right arrow, I can get out of the square root symbol, and I just type -1. So either way, you need to make sure the -1 is not underneath the root, right? So if I hit enter, I can get that value, right? And again, if I multiply by 100, I can put that as a percent. So the average percent change per year was 21.5%, right? So per year. So that's how much it grew, right? All right, so that's all I have for this video.